On a cool autumn evening in the foothills of the Rockies, a mother of 3 picked up her phone and dialed 911. Her husband, she said, had vanished without a trace. But what appeared to be a missing person case would soon unravel into one of the region's most disturbing true crime stories. A story of betrayal, hidden lives, and a confession that was captured on tape. Tonight we examine the case of Laura Whitman and David Carter, a couple who seemed to have it all until their picture-perfect life dissolved into suspicion, violence, and tragedy. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Twisted Case Files. Silver Creek, Utah, an affluent community perched at the edge of the Wasatch Mountains. Here, large homes dot the hillsides, and neighbors wave as they pass. Among the families living here were 49-year-old David Carter and his 41-year-old wife, Laura Whitman. To everyone looking in from the outside, they were the embodiment of stability. David was no ordinary resident. A decorated Special Forces soldier with the Utah National Guard, he'd served his country for more than a decade. His comrades described him as brilliant, steady under pressure, and the person everyone went to for answers. Laura was seen as the devoted military wife, a homebody who managed the household and cared for their 3 children, ages 11, 7, and 5. Neighbors saw her at school pickups, at community barbecues, at the grocery store. She seemed warm, polite, and completely dedicated to her family. Friends often remarked how well they balanced each other. David, the disciplined soldier, Laura, the nurturing mother. They lived quietly, without scandal. But as in so many true crime stories, appearances concealed a very different reality. Behind closed doors, the Carter-Whitman marriage was cracking, and those cracks would widen into a chasm that no one could cross. By mid-2024, the picture of domestic bliss had begun to fray. Arguments were no longer rare. They were routine. According to court records, the couple had been considering divorce since July. Text messages later obtained by investigators revealed a relationship marked by anger, belittling remarks, and emotional escalation. In August 2024, Laura sought a temporary protective order, claiming she needed protection from her husband. To her friends, this seemed like a shocking but straightforward story, a frightened wife trying to shield herself and her children. But when 3rd District Commissioner Harold Keene reviewed the evidence, the picture he saw was different. Videos Laura submitted didn't show a terrified spouse. They showed 2 people in a heated, mutual confrontation. Laura just as aggressive, if not more so, than David. Texts from her phone berated and belittled her husband, seemingly trying to provoke him into a violent response that never came. On September 16, 2024, the commissioner dismissed the protective order. In a note that would later seem hauntingly prophetic, he wrote that the parties were locked in a, quote, highly dysfunctional marriage, bringing out the worst in the parties, and that a divorce should have been filed long before. No one in that courtroom knew that Laura had already chosen another path, one that would make divorce unnecessary. Meanwhile, David's friends began noticing a change. In the final weeks of his life, he spent more and more nights sleeping at a guard facility, telling confidants he was worried about his safety at home. He confided to his longtime friend, retired guardsman Marcus Long, that it was time to move on, time to end the marriage for good. What David didn't fully realize was that Laura was living a double life. She had entered into an affair, not a fleeting fling, but an intense relationship that consumed her time and thoughts. In fact, it was with this lover that Laura would reveal the darkest secrets of all. On September 19th, just 2 days before the murder, Laura showed her lover a loaded Glock 19X she kept at home. It might have seemed innocuous. Military families often own firearms, but prosecutors would later argue this was part of her methodical planning. That same week, she arranged for her 3 children to stay at her parents' house overnight. It was an ordinary-looking decision with an extraordinary consequence. The children would be gone from the house the night their father was killed. September 20th started like any other day. But by evening, the fragile facade of the Carter-Whitman marriage was about to crumble completely. David had discovered the truth about his wife's affair. Witnesses would later report a heated argument between the couple that night. According to Laura's own later confession, David confronted her, shouting that he knew she'd been sleeping with someone else. Years of resentment and bitterness boiled over into a single, violent confrontation. What happened next is still pieced together from confessions, phone records, and forensic evidence. But one fact is clear. By the early hours of September 21st, David Carter would never again leave his house alive. And as the rest of Silver Creek slept, Laura Whitman set in motion a plan that would destroy not just her husband, but the entire future of their family. The night of September 20th, 2024, began like countless others inside the Whitman-Carter household. The children were already at Laura's parents' house for a planned overnight stay. Only 2 people remained inside the home, Laura and David. But the atmosphere in their master bedroom was anything but routine. David had confronted Laura about her affair earlier in the evening, Neighbors later told police they heard raised voices through the thin mountain air. To an outsider, it might have sounded like an ordinary marital argument. But prosecutors say Laura had already made a plan. According to Laura's later statements, David eventually fell asleep in the master bedroom. In the early hours before dawn, as he lay vulnerable and unaware, she retrieved a 9mm handgun from their nightstand, the very weapon David used at the shooting range. What happened next was swift and irreversible. Investigators believe Laura stood over her sleeping husband and fired a single round into his head. The disciplined soldier who had survived deployments overseas never saw the threat in his own home. In her confession to her lover, Laura described how she lifted David's body into a large rooftop storage container, dragging it down the stairs of their house. The task left bruises on her arms and legs. She smashed his phone, then drove his truck to a nearby subdivision, abandoning it a few blocks away to make it look as though he'd left voluntarily. With David's body still inside the container in the back of her minivan, Laura headed north out of Silver Creek before dawn. GPS data later retrieved from her phone would trace her journey toward rural Davis County. She told her lover she buried David in a shallow grave at a location police still haven't been able to identify. Back at the house, Laura began an extensive cleanup. She bleached walls and baseboards. She ordered carpet cleaning supplies and, most notably, a brand new mattress to replace the one stained with David's blood. The mattress would arrive just 2 days later, a purchase that would become one of the most damning pieces of evidence in the case. At this point, Laura may have believed she had committed the perfect crime, but she was about to make a mistake that would unravel everything. On the night of September 22nd, just before midnight, Laura drove to her lover's home. Instead of keeping her secret, she unburdened herself. She told him everything: the shooting, the disposal of the body, the cleanup. When he asked about the bruises on her body, she replied with chilling nonchalance. She had gotten them while burying her husband. The lover, terrified by what he had just heard, made a decision of his own. He began recording their next phone conversation. What Laura said on that call would become the most haunting piece of evidence in the state's case against her. Her voice was calm, detached, and when he told her he was frightened by what she'd confessed, she replied, "If you think I could even hurt a fly, he wasn't a person anymore." He wasn't David. In those words, prosecutors say, Laura Whitman revealed not only her guilt, but her mindset. A mindset that dehumanized her husband and turned murder into just another decision. For nearly a week after David Carter's disappearance, the picture Laura Whitman painted for friends and family was of an ordinary separation. She told people David had left for a few days to clear his head. But beneath that facade, evidence of a killing and a cover-up was waiting to be discovered. Laura abandoned David's pickup truck several blocks from their home, hoping to make it look as though he had driven away. She smashed his phone. She bleached the master bedroom and ordered a new mattress on September 24th, just 3 days after the killing. Delivery records later showed the mattress arriving on the 26th. By then, the house smelled strongly of cleaning agents. Reddish-brown spots remained on the blinds, walls, and bed frame slats. What Laura didn't realize was that her own phone was recording her every move. GPS data tracked her to the subdivision where David's truck was dumped, then north into rural Davis County in the early hours of September 21st, exactly where she told her lover she had buried him. Meanwhile, the Utah National Guard was already concerned. David, a highly reliable soldier, had failed to report for duty on September 23rd. His colleagues launched informal checks that quickly escalated into a missing person report. All the while, Laura's lover was saving screenshots of their messages and recording their calls. When she spoke in detached tones about quote, cleaning up and getting rid of things, he quietly built a file of evidence. On September 28th, acting on a tip and concern for David's welfare, Silver Creek police obtained a search warrant for the Whitman Carter home. Inside the master bedroom, they found a large blood stain hidden under the bed. Blood was also detected on the bed frame slats. The house reeked of bleach. And, most tellingly, the mattress was brand new. Detectives collected samples. They documented every spot and stain. They began piecing together a timeline that matched the lovers' recordings. Search efforts expanded into northern Utah. Teams of law enforcement, volunteers, and David's own military friends combed canyons, fields, and waterways. Over 70 searchers joined the operation, hoping to find the missing soldier. Months later, they would still be searching. Then, on October 2nd, armed with the recordings, text messages, and physical evidence, police arrested Laura Whitman on charges of first-degree murder and obstruction of justice. But the case didn't stop with her arrest. Investigators discovered that Laura's parents, Thomas and Evelyn Whitman, had spent hours at her house in late September, despite initially claiming they were only there briefly to pick up clothing. Evidence suggested they had purchased the new mattress and even reset their phones remotely during the cleanup period. During a search of their home, detectives found a Glock 19X gun box wrapped in a child's onesie and hidden in a plastic tote near Laura's bedroom. the same model she had shown her lover days before the murder. Confronted with this, Thomas Whitman inadvertently revealed knowledge of where the incident happened, confirming investigators' suspicions. With Laura in custody and her parents facing obstruction charges, the case moved from a missing person investigation to a full-scale homicide prosecution. But one question still haunted detectives, friends and family alike. Where was David Carter's body? By mid-October, the Silver Creek case had become the most closely watched homicide investigation in Utah. Laura Whitman, once a devoted mother and respected member of the community, now sat in the county jail facing a charge of first-degree murder and 2 counts of obstruction of justice. During her first appearance in court, she wore a plain gray jumpsuit, her hands clasped in front of her. No one from David's side of the family sat behind her. In a separate courtroom, her parents, Thomas and Evelyn Whitman, faced their own hearings on obstruction charges. The state argued that Laura had plotted the killing for weeks. They played excerpts from the secret recordings, her voice calm, clinical, describing the gun, the body, the burial. Jurors visibly winced. Even seasoned reporters whispered about the chilling tone of her words. Meanwhile, the couple's 3 children were living with relatives under emergency guardianship. Overnight, they had lost both parents, one dead, one in jail. School counselors and social workers spoke of the emotional toll the case was taking on them. But the prosecution faced a problem. Without a body, they had only circumstantial evidence and the recordings. The defense seized on this, arguing that David might still be alive somewhere and that Laura had exaggerated or fabricated her confessions to manipulate her lover. Friends from the National Guard pushed back, describing David as responsible, committed, and deeply attached to his children. "He wouldn't just disappear," said Marcus Long, his longtime friend. "He told me he was afraid, but he wanted a divorce, not to vanish." Another battle loomed over David's life insurance. Laura had tried to cash in policies totaling more than $1 million, but the companies froze the payouts after her arrest. Civil attorneys filed petitions on behalf of David's estate and the children, arguing that the money should be held in trust until the criminal case was resolved. In December, a judge ordered that all insurance proceeds be deposited with the court. For now, the children's future depended on those frozen funds, and the outcome of a murder trial still months away. Winter arrived in the Rockies. Search teams still scoured canyons and back roads for David Carter's remains. Months of digging turned up nothing, yet prosecutors pressed forward, convinced they had enough to convict Laura Whitman, even without a body. In February 2025, a grand jury indicted Laura on 1 count of aggravated murder. Her parents accepted plea agreements on obstruction charges in exchange for testimony about what they had seen and done during the days after David's disappearance. For the children, the legal process meant endless waiting, supervised visits, therapy sessions, and questions they were too young to fully understand. Who would tell them the whole truth? When? And how would they carry the weight of their family's tragedy into adulthood? The trial, set for late 2025, promised to be one of the most closely watched in state history. Legal analysts debated whether the recorded phone calls, GPS data, and forensic evidence would outweigh the absence of a body. Others wondered if Laura might take a plea deal before jurors were sworn in. Behind bars, Laura Whitman's once carefully constructed world had collapsed. Her lover had cut off contact. Her parents faced sentencing. And the 3 children she had once tucked in at night were now strangers to her, living under another roof. The case raised broader questions about domestic violence, power, and manipulation. How does a marriage degrade into lethal violence? Could this crime have been prevented? And what happens to a community and 3 innocent children when the answers may never be complete? As the courtroom drama approaches, the fate of Laura Whitman, the memory of David Carter, and the future of 3 young lives hang in the balance. Justice in Silver Creek has been delayed, but not denied, and the search for the truth and for David's body goes on. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share with friends, and also subscribe.